Hello, and welcome to another session of what is it, the Right Move podcast by Oak Realty. I'm joined with my co-host Pamela Bathen, and we're fortunate enough to have today our special guest, Dennis Ahern of Ryan and Agostinelli Insurance here in Ashland. Welcome, Dennis.
Happy to be here. Thanks
Glad
for
you're
having me,
here.
guys.
I've known you for how long? And I don't completely get what you do, so this is very timely.
That makes two of us. Then, yeah.
So we'll approach this on two levels. First, tell us about the company, and then how it would translate into helping us and our clients.
Sure.
So, can you tell us about it, Ryan and Agostinelli? I don't. It's been different names and
It is.
over time.
We're trying to pare that down because by
Okay.
the time you pick up the phone and say the whole name, it's insurance is boring enough. Never mind trying to say a long-winded name like that. So yeah, we are trying to sort of pare it down to AT&R Insurance.
That's why the email. All right.
But yeah, Agostinelli and Teller and Ryan Insurance were two separate entities that merged, and now we're just slimming the thing right down.
So I don't completely understand. Are they? And this is complete ignorance, but I'm sure many people are.
Many people are not
ignorant?
knowledgeable, not ignorant.
Not ignorant. No, I'm not knowledgeable. Or yeah, well, we could make a case, but in any case, so I don't understand the insurance business. Are these franchise type things? Are these mom and pops that open that then merge? How does that work?
So there's a lot of consolidation,
Okay.
especially now. I think what used to happen. We are a family agency. My wife is the third generation. It was her grandfather that started it, and then her father, and then she sort of reluctantly went to work in it. A lot of them are sort of there's nepotism, or there's this familial passing on. But it seems like now there's been a lot of consolidation in the industry, like a lot of industries. But so that we're not a franchise.
Okay.
There are a lot of agencies that are either selling it or to franchises. But what we are is an independent insurance agency, which is that we represent multiple carriers.
Okay.
Compared to other, like a captive or a direct writer like a Geico, that Geico writes their own insurance.
Okay.
Progressive writes their own insurance.
State Farm, those are direct State Farm agents. If you went to a State Farm office, not that we have many near here, but
Correct. State Farm's a unique animal in that they'll write policies in Massachusetts, but only if you've moved to Massachusetts and had an existing policy elsewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what we do. We write from different carriers, and so the idea is that if Pam comes in and this one carrier isn't a fit for her for whatever reason, or the rate isn't great, we have other options. So that's the premise of an independent agent, which is what we are.
And then are you handling just certain companies, carriers?
We are. So,
Okay.
So again, depending on the scope, how much business you write, there are plenty of small independent agencies that write with a ton of carriers. And I think depending on how long you've been in business or how long you've had the appointments with the carriers, we weren't that. We essentially were a captive agency in that we had one carrier that we were writing with. And we've added carriers over the last few years because despite the fact that we were writing with a good company, it wasn't always the perfect solution for somebody. And if you don't have
All the options.
another solution, so we can't be everything to everybody. We don't have expertise in some areas, and we don't have carriers in some areas, but we want to be more things to the people that want to do business with us.
So who is doing business with you? Is it like home, auto, and small business, or is it who is doing business with you?
Yeah, primarily that's the Steve, primarily what we're called as a property and casualty or P&C shop or office, where we do
Okay.
home, auto, umbrella policies. We do small, commercial policies or liability policies, commercial auto.
Okay.
And that's common of a lot of independent agents. There's other wings of, life insurance or health. There are other companies that do that. we're licensed to. We don't do a ton of that business.
Okay.
We're primarily doing personal and commercial line business.
Okay. And that makes sense.
Yeah.
And just a little history. So I knew the grandfather Henry way back when, and the office originally was Route 135 in Framingham.
Yep.
And there was the acquisition of Ryan Insurance, which was originally 128 Main Street, which is now a mixed-use building on Main Street.
Yep.
And you moved the offices to...
Now we're on Front
you're on-
Street.
Is that 44 Front
44 Front
44
Street.
Front Street, right.
Yep.
So it's not far from the sunny side, and that location...
Right next door.
Yeah.
I love, especially with the beautification of Ashland. The last couple of years have been a little dicey, but no, in all honesty, being downtown is great. Visibility. I think as Ashland as a community changes and gets a little bit more vibrant downtown, that is a good thing for us, and it's fun to see.
Yeah.
So our clients seem to, I was thinking about this before we came. Our clients seem to usually use your profile of agency. We don't get a lot of people that are using a Geico or and it might be a New England thing
Well,
that we prefer to
There-
know our guy.
I mean,
Or-
Dennis,
yeah.
you may speak to that. If I may, I get into this conversation with my daughters all the time. One's in L.A., another one's down south, just outside of Charleston, and I think they use AA as the familiarity with the military,
Yeah.
the one that Gronk can't get into, and I go say why, and they say, well, the price is great, but I've always appreciated the fact that I was able to call your father-in-law, I'm able to call you when there's a problem, and I get the answer in this personal service. And I think it's very much what you and your office does is offer personal service to your clients as compared to calling an 800 number and being on hold and the call getting dropped and getting frustrated. So I guess you get what you pay for. Not that your prices are extremely different, I don't think. All I can say is that in a boost to you and your business, that I've always enjoyed the personal side of having somebody that I know can pick up the phone and get me the answer, whether it's registering my car, flipping a trailer on 495, whatever the case might be. Agostinelli Teller Ryan Insurance has been there to...
He throws that out. Most people don't have registering my car, flipping a trailer.
Oh, it was quite an experience, And your father-in-law was extremely helpful in that situation. It was not pretty, but he did a great job. But it's the
You're here to
personal
tell
side of the
about
business. I'm here to tell about it. Yeah, it was very surreal.
No, it's I think that in any business, and certainly insurance, which isn't it's not like real estate. That's
Not as glamorous as real
no,
estate.
in all honesty, because it's certainly a necessity for most people, but it's not something that people are super excited to spend money on. And I think the barrier to entry, the cost of insurance is expensive, but the cost of having good insurance isn't typically significantly more.
Right.
And so part of that is education, telling somebody that doesn't want to spend, discretionary income on something that, but
They might not use.
and might never
Right.
use, right?
Right.
Chris Rock has a good bit about, shouldn't, if I pay for insurance in case, we don't think we can swear on this podcast.
No, you say whatever you want to say.
Us.
But he says that, in case shit happens, but
Yeah.
if shit doesn't happen, shouldn't I get my money back? And so there is that sort of mentality of if people are going to spend the money that they don't want to spend, you want to make sure that, God forbid, something happens, that you're covered the way that you want to be, you don't want to be. So that sometimes is a difficult conversation to have on the front end when people don't necessarily want to part with that money.
We have
So
the
that's part of the
different.
deal.
We have the different challenge with clients, and I have to admit I haven't always been deeply involved in this part. All of a sudden, a lender will say, "Oh, you have to go get a binder,"
Yeah.
and at that point, somebody would pay $7 million for that binder if it means I'm going to close on my house. But one or two of them have tried to go through, the big national companies to do that.
Yeah.
That does not work very well. And I don't really understand the process and what a binder means.
Yeah.
And does that mean they're now your client for life? You know, if I send someone
Yes.
to
No, just kidding.
you, they're
No.
required. It's a requirement. And
no-
by the way, can I just segue and say I'm still back trying to figure out the HGTV show that we could. I'm like, you're right. It's not all that glamorous. How would we fancy that up? I don't think we can. But
Let's wait for
continue.
a commercial.
That's right.
I'm glad that we can swear now. No, I'm just kidding. This is going to get loose. No, the binder thing is a pretty simple thing. It's a piece of paper that basically lets the lender know that coverage is bound. That when the home closes, that if something happens, that they're protected.
Okay.
And so it's literally a piece of paper that shows the coverage that the home is insured for.
But then does that mean that they've bought like a yearly policy from you?
Yeah, a binder is like a 30-day document. It says that there's
Okay.
coverage.
Okay.
But what happens is, until the home closes, and there's language in there saying that, that the insurance is paid for the year, will be paid at closing. It happens a lot of times that you guys probably know this, gets rolled into closing costs.
Yes.
So what happens typically for a new home purchase is that first year gets rolled into the closing costs. And so the customer has their home insurance taken care of for the first year. And if they escrow it, it's part of their monthly payment.
Okay.
And then when the policy renews the following year, it just gets paid by the escrow.
Okay.
There are also people that direct bill, but their payments would start the following year.
I never quite, I've sent people and I've never quite understood because it seems to be fraught with anxiety, the whole binder thing.
And it from our purpose, it's producing a binder is easy because once you've provided a quote and coverage and limits, all that stuff, it's literally just sending so that the attorneys and the realtors and the lender specifically know that they're listed on this policy if something were to happen, if there was a loss, or
Place
if,
burns down.
yeah,
Before,
or if the insured doesn't pay they get alerted. And so that's a binder's basically just saying that for 30 days that there's coverage on this place and the lender is listed on it.
Okay.
So there are instances, I would imagine, especially when times are bad and folks are being foreclosed on, where they stop making their mortgage payments and they stop paying their insurance. And then the insurance company will then start paying the umbrella insurance company to make sure that their investment, which they have at least probably 80 or 90% of the loan is in the bank's name. So the bank wants to make sure that they're protected.
So they'll pay the insurance company.
They'll start, well, either that, they won't necessarily pay who Dennis might represent. They'll have their
coverage,
own, that forced coverage, which is twice, triple, whatever times the typical premium when you're in good standing.
Correct.
So those are little nuances. And there's me scratching the table,
Hey,
and
there's
my
us.
face, and Pam with a different haircut, and you with a different shirt.
Yeah, there we
But
go.
you mentioned.
And we're back.
Yeah, we're back. No, you mentioned
That's all right. That's
Chris. You mentioned Chris Rock. One of his favorite lines, nothing to do with insurance, was I think the saying was, "Did you ever notice that drug dealers never have a sale?" But that's a whole different topic.
I like, I just threw a George Carlin thing in that thing I'm writing, talking about your stuff, how we have to have a new house to have your stuff. But he talks about insurance too. And you buy insurance because you got stuff, But what, with that in mind, if someone just says, I need to cover my house, is it, what are they covering? Are they covering, can you do different gradients of it? I know what I have.
Yeah. Most of the policies will, each carrier has a different way for how they sort of calculate what it costs to cover the home. So there's that variable. And so sometimes from carrier to carrier, Steve as a carrier would say, oh, this home costs whatever, $500,000 to insure. And then Pam as a carrier would say, oh, well, no, that we think it's $525,000 or something like that. And so sometimes you'll get slightly different coverage amounts, but most policies are package policies. So they take whatever that dwelling coverage is, that $500,000 or $525,000, and then the subsequent categories of it are percentages from that first number. So it's other structures, it's your personal property, and then if you get displaced because of a loss, it's the loss of use coverage. Or those are the primary coverages for a home, and then there's liability.
If somebody breaks their leg in your driveway, kind of thing.
That kind of thing. But,
Okay.
yeah. And then medical payments, which is a small little sort of piece to that. That's more like the slip and fall kind of coverage. But
How much time do you spend? And this is an honest question. I tell people, and if I'm wrong, speak up.
Yeah.
I tell people that using a smaller insurance company with someone you can talk to means that they can fight for you with the insurance company. Is that a true statement?
that's one of the reasons that we exist. Is
Okay.
we're an advocate for, I'd say, our customers first, and the carriers that we represent second. And it's not always. I mean, there are sometimes difficult discussions to say, well, here's some documentation showing you that we couldn't cover this, or that this might not be, because we try to be as upfront, and so much of it is education. It's
People don't understand. I had actually, I was thinking Hilldale, some really nice people who had owned homes but were not clear on the fact that you were not the insurance company.
yeah,
If that makes sense?
sure.
People are not always clear on that because it's not something you do a lot.
Right, or inevitably it comes up in a claim process, right? We always suggest we can handle it one of three ways. We can help submit it with you, not for you, but with you, because we need their input. We need, it's us
Need to know what
On
went
the
giving
on.
claim,
their
on the
account.
claim, you mean?
Yeah, on a claim.
Claim.
We can give you a telephone number. A lot of these companies now, you can do it through a website or an app or something like that. Submit the claim on your own. And sometimes there's exactly what you're describing. It's why am I dealing with them? You're my agent.
Yeah.
And it's not so much a passing off, but you're going to be assigned a rep, and then that communication is we can always help, but it ends up being a little bit of a go-between.
Okay.
If there isn't clarity about coverage, or if there's confusion, we're a resource. But I think that's what you're describing, is that sometimes there's, we always offer to submit it with somebody and be able to walk people through that process. But
Worst case, you need a lawyer.
right.
And how hard do insurance companies try to not cover something? Is it really cut and dried, or do they?
No, it's
Push
different.
back.
No, there's some companies that people will get will get claim back. I mean, typically auto accidents are more frequent, but they'll get a value for their car that they thought was above what they, it's all over the map. There are people that feel like they've been slighted. There are people that feel like they've gotten
Hit the lottery.
well, I don't know whether they're going that far, but more than they might have been entitled to. And I think it's situation specific, it's carrier specific. I think there are some that are consistently better than others. The truth is, too, Pam, we represent a small fraction of companies, and so I feel like I have a decent grasp on those. There are others that it's hard for me to say.
Mm-hmm.
Then you mentioned different tools, whether it's the website or the app. I think you mentioned to me not that long ago you're working on an app for your customers.
Yeah. So there's I feel like, and actually I want to ask you guys your opinion on a couple of these things, but it's big business. Insurance is big business, but I feel like, especially in the market that we're in Massachusetts, the companies are kind of small, and there's a lot of sort of dated technologies and systems that they have, and it's only been recently that there seems to be an influx in some of these better tech companies coming into this field. So we partner with a company, Glovebox, that helps provide a customer-facing product. So it's basically for our customers, or it's even for people that want a quote. They can either going online, go to Glovebox and put our information and request a quote, or for our customers, they put in their account information, and it becomes a portal for them, so they can see their policies regardless of what company they're with.
That's great.
the beauty of it too, Pam, is like if you have a home and auto and umbrella policy with us, all of those would be in that app.
Because what happens now, if I don't keep a hard copy, I'm calling you
You're calling
to say,
me,
oh,
and we
okay.
send you an email, and then
Yeah. And I'm sure you're very nice about it.
right. But what happens is it's one central repository for this stuff.
That's great.
And if you change a carrier, well, then that carrier is now in this app. And if you have a home down in Florida that we don't write, you can add that into this same glove box. So even though it's not, it's our branded app, it's
your account.
You have all of your stuff in one spot. So it's neat for, I don't know, silly stuff. Like my in-laws registered their car. We had, they got a hard copy of the registration, but we put that in their app. If you ever got jammed up or, you have it in one spot.
I remember my parents putting insurance documents in a safe.
Oh, sure.
Because that was, how else were you going to get them if
Yeah.
you needed them? And I don't even know where mine are. So
Yeah.
that would be helpful. I'm sure you have something to say, but I was.
I do,
Go
but
ahead.
that's okay.
No, go ahead. Yours is
So-
probably more on topic.
Nah, you mentioned Florida,
Yep.
and as folks doing business here in Ashland, Massachusetts, New England, different climate, and because of that climate, a lot of folks go to Florida.
Sure.
And one of the challenges in Florida right now is homeowner associations and insurance. But I think we face some of those challenges here in New England, especially folks that maybe are on the Cape and there's a pool.
So what do you mean? How does that work?
Well, that was my question to Dennis. When you have a property it's
I thought you were asking Pam.
no. It's great when you get up in the morning and you have your coffee and you're staring out at the ocean, but it's not so great when there's a hurricane or some sort of force majeure event that puts your property in jeopardy. So that must be challenging. I mean, is there a lot of concern from folks, especially with do you not write if I owned a property in Florida, God forbid? You wouldn't do that coverage because you don't write in that state, but you might advise. But are there homeowner association issues in terms of premiums increasing in Massachusetts? And again, folks on the water, please.
You're
bail me out
following
here.
him.
Yeah.
You're following this. I can
Yeah.
tell. Yeah,
I am.
yeah,
We've
all right.
been living this.
Oh.
The insurance world is I think, again, I haven't been doing this for a long time, but it's a relatively conservative industry, and the last year has been, I would say, pretty turbulent, and rates have, and you guys are probably not naive to this, have jumped drastically.
Yeah.
So it's a hard market, and a lot of it is attributable to things like that. So, for instance, in Florida, they've had a lot of admitted carriers pull out of that market because of the amount of losses. And what that does is they have, similar to what you were describing for the pool. So Massachusetts has a state program.
You can't be denied, right?
Correct. So, and they write a lot of Cape properties, coastal properties.
So if you have a house in, I don't know, name Yarmouth,
If you were in Marblehead, for example, and you're right on the cliff,
water.
yeah.
and the reality is that house probably is in danger, and an insurance company really wouldn't be thrilled about it. But somebody has to write that.
State
The state,
requires it.
the
State
state
requires.
has a plan, has a program that, they have certain limits. So if you have a $2 million home, they only write up to $1 million, but they have to be able to write that coverage. Florida is similar, and what's happening in Florida is that plan is now getting heavily taxed because all of these companies are going out. So now people are defaulting to this state plan. It's happened in actually just 2 days ago. State Farm, they're saying, is non-renewing like 72,000 policies in the state of California. So what inevitably what happens is we're pretty fortunate to live where we do live, that we haven't had. We've had some pretty big wind and some ice events, cold.
Trees.
Yeah, but relative to other parts of the country, we're pretty insulated. But when most of these companies are national or regional, and when they're affected, everyone kind of gets affected. So that's one variable that's contributed to some of the high rate peaks, and then obviously the cost of materials. Nobody's going to cry for the insurance carriers, right? Let's all be fair there. But since COVID, rates were frozen, so companies couldn't take rate, couldn't increase. So there was a couple of years that didn't happen. So we're all feeling part of that, and then the cost of materials, the time it takes to fix things, whether it's a home. We were talking about renovations before we jumped on this, and just the time that it takes to do that. Well, if you're displaced in your home, not only is it the materials more, but you're displaced, and the insurance is paying out
covering
for that. Or the same thing with a rental car. Yeah. Your car gets smashed up, and now it's taking longer for that claim to settle, and the carrier's paying out more money. So as a result of that, all of these carriers have taken rate, and some of them multiple times in the past year. And so as consumers, we're all feeling that.
So when the rates do go up, and I had to deal with this recently with your agency, where being a good granddad, I have my granddaughter on my auto coverage.
Yep.
And because she's a teen, it's expensive.
Yep.
And
very expensive.
Being who I am, I asked one of your folks, what can I do to lower my premium? And it's raising your deductible. But again, because prices have gone up so much in the cost of everything, I didn't feel like it was that much of a gamble going from 500 to 1,000, because 500 is the new 1,000.
Right. Right.
But
what's $500 amongst friends, right, Steve? No, you're right. There is that's always an option of how do we play with the rate so that we're it's the risk you're taking is what was 300. We still have the occasional stumble across an occasional $300 deductible that then became 500, and now 1,000 is more of the standard. When you talk about cars, it's so the way like a collision deductible works, and forgive me if I'm telling you guys stuff that you know.
No.
It comes into play when you're at fault to repair your car. So Pam's at a stop sign and I hit Pam. My property damage covers Pam's car because I'm at fault. And in order for me to get insurance to cover my car, I pay my deductible first. And so the damage has to be more than what the deductible is. And then coverage comes into effect. Well, we talked about 500. With all these cars now having sensors, you don't have to have much of an event to reach that threshold. So that's one reason why the argument holds a little bit of water.
Yeah.
The other thing that we started to do a lot of is the accident forgiveness. If you've heard about that, the commercials highlight it all. But it's basically insurance on insurance, which is I'm going to pay to have an at-fault accident forgiven in terms of premium.
So that my premium doesn't rise.
You still are assessed the points, but your premium, it'll forgive the premium increase as a result of it.
So how many times can I do that? Because I would be over the limit. Just
if I may.
Yeah.
I remember Steve Donahue calling me years ago when I lived on Stony Brook, and we had skylights and a roof issue. And I put in multiple claims, and the last time I put in a claim, Steve called me up and he said, "You want me to tell you what the carrier said?" I said, "Sure." He said, "Tell Mr. Greenberg we're supposed to make money off of him. He's not supposed to make money off of us." I mean, I did have damage, but they'll only go so far, and there's only so much negotiating you guys can do, to help your client.
And you know what? And that's actually a touchy subject. But how much fraud is there? Do you run across it like in a small town environment, or is it a big? Is it more of a bigger scale, big company thing?
We don't often deal with it. We obviously document conversations. contracts, we sign
And believe me,
contracts.
I'm not saying how much fraud is committed through your agency. It's more, I
No,
don't have a
just-
concept because people are always talking about insurance scams, and I don't have a concept of how that applies to small town America.
Yeah, and I guess the truth is I probably don't either.
Okay.
Inevitably, people want to be covered, and when they have lost, a lot of times it's trying to figure out, work on the margins kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because the whole point of the service is to have coverage when you get
Cover you.
yeah.
What's that old sales expression? It's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it.
Yeah.
Getting back to houses for a second.
Sure.
I remember someone mentioning it to me, and it was sort of a revelation. But when you do insure your property, it's just the structure. It's not the land. I mean, if the land goes, we all go. So I think people need to understand that the value that's put on there is really just the bricks and mortar, or the mortar and the lumber.
That
So
comes
it's-
up a lot, especially in today's market, right? I spent $800,000 on this property, and you're only insuring it for $5 million. Well, it's a
We're not covering you 2 acres of
1,500.
land.
Yeah, it's a 1,500 square foot house, and the cost to rebuild that isn't. Maybe it is now. I mean, but that's the point. Yeah, there's always a discrepancy, or not always. Sometimes it lines up okay, but inevitably the dwelling coverage doesn't always line up with what somebody would pay for the property.
I didn't know that either. Can I head left turn? Or do
Go
you have
where you want to go.
Important questions.
Sure.
This isn't important. I remember you did something before this for a living. And I
did.
don't remember the story. So how did you get involved in this? Because you're not boring. You're not boring, Dennis.
I sold dental supplies and equipment. So the way that I got into it was because it was my wife's family's business. She was working there maybe somewhat reluctantly, I don't know, but she had been doing it for some time. Our girls were young. And so when my father-in-law wanted to get out of the business, I said, Tina, what a great opportunity for you. And she said, not so much.
Yeah.
So that's sort of, I love it. So I had a corporate job that I had a lot of flexibility with, and I gave all of that up. So
Benefits. I
yeah.
get benefits.
You were a son-in-law, and Steve was a son-in-law.
son-in-law, yeah.
I actually have a friend in Rhode Island who's the third generation of son-in-laws to take over an insurance business. It's if there's no male that wants to take it over, who better than a son-in-law?
That's right. That's right. So no, it's worked out great. I love the opportunity to, I'd done the other job for a dozen years, and I was at a point where I wanted a new challenge, and this was certainly an opportunity to kind of bet on yourself.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's been a learning curve because I certainly didn't grow up in it. I didn't come into it as a kid, but I like the networking stuff. I like the fact that we have established customer. I mean, we have customers that have been with our agency longer than I've been alive, which is saying something, given that you can see it all the gray. So long-standing relationships, which is, I think, great. And obviously, today's market is a different market. It's a more transient society. You have to be doing more things, and so we have to, as a business, adapt. But I kind of like that challenge. It's
It's becoming more one-dimensional. I mean, the app is a great thing,
Yes.
but it's the personal comes out of the picture until there's a problem. And and obviously people are stressed, so you have to have the right personality. And your staff, I've always found to be very helpful and to the point, and usually pretty knowledgeable.
Yeah.
So that's been an advantage. Do you see any trends relative to real estate and your business?
I was going to ask you guys. One thing so I talked about the big business, but I also think there are some things that conservative industry, but also sometimes slow to adapt to trends.
Mm-hmm.
And so one thing that seems to come up a lot that I'm not sure too many of the carriers handle well is, do you guys see a fair amount of selling a home and then the buyer rents back to the person that they've sold to for a short amount of time?
we don't see a fair amount of it. The attorneys hate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's asking for a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The attorneys hate it.
On our end too. But it seems like, I don't know how to say a trend, but it was something that I didn't really know existed, and it seems like it's cropped up a
cropping
little
up.
bit more.
I think it's because people are over anxious to purchase.
Yep.
And sellers, the first question that we typically ask when we go on a listing appointment where are you going? And they go, well, we don't know yet. I go, well, when you figure that out, we'll be happy to come back and talk about selling your house. Because where are you going? My sister in Hopkinton has a tiny little house on a tiny little lot, and she's done after 40 years. It's a stone foundation, and it's just too much for her. So, she said, well, I want to buy a condo. I go, well, it's just not going to happen that easy. So we're going to move her out of the house. We're going to fix the house up a little bit. And then, she'll be in this apartment. I think she's going to love it. She's very excited. It's all new. It's all stainless steel. Granite countertops, those things that everybody wants nowadays. But that's a unique situation where she has that flexibility.
She can afford to do that.
No.
Well,
I can afford for her to do that.
Let's say in theory.
Yeah, no. When she sells her house, it'll be great. Be great for her. Be great for me. Be great for everybody.
I just wonder because the market.
I wrote that already.
Because the market is so hot, right? So
yes, that's the
for
problem.
buyers, they have to get this deal in, and
Yep.
they have to make all these
The
concessions.
sellers aren't ready yet.
And the sellers,
Yeah.
they want to capitalize on, and so it feels like everybody's ready to jump on board. And then, but now what? Now we have to actually figure it out. And so
Yeah.
it seems like it's happened. Anyways, the reason I ask it from our standpoint is when Pam sells her house to Steve and then rents it back, it's not really hard on Pam because Pam could just take a rent. She no longer owns the home. So in theory, from an insurance standpoint, she's not covered. It's Steve's insurance.
Yeah.
So it's easy for Pam to get a renter's policy to cover her stuff and give her liability. Easy. For the new buyer, if you're a homeowner's is that you own it and live in
And
it.
occupy it.
Yeah. So writing that type of policy, most of the carriers aren't set up or savvy enough or have a mechanism in place that they cover that.
I never thought of that because it's more like an investment property then if it's a rent back.
So it's like a different type of policy, which are typically more expensive, which typically, if you're writing them, carry some sort of minimum amount of payment. So it gets a little bit clunky. There's a couple of carriers that do it, but for most carriers, they don't want that kind of.
They don't want it, but it's in the agreement.
Yeah.
It's typically in the agreement that the homeowner who sells it keeps their policy in place.
Yeah.
The other side of it is someone, again, who's moving out to have renovations with the intent to sell. So place burns down.
Right.
Unless you can prove occupancy, the insurance company isn't necessarily going to
Right.
be happy about paying for that house to be rebuilt.
Right.
So that's what tests people's character, I think.
I never thought of that. And then what's the story on covering an empty home?
So there's the same thing. That's a separate a
Whole
type
separate
of
policy.
vacant dwelling policy that is just it's written differently. So there's homeowner's policy, which is owner occupied. There's condo fits under that same thing, or renter's policy. But then if you
And I have a
own a
question
home but
on
you're
that.
not living there, that's a different type of policy. Or if it's a vacant dwelling, that's a different type of policy.
So is a condo policy automatically from the studs in, walls
No.
in?
Well,
Not
I'd say no,
automatically.
but
No.
There's different. It depends on the language of the master policy. So condos are different in that.
The master policy of that community may differ from that community.
Correct.
Okay.
And the
Okay.
language can be different.
All right.
they're responsible for the exterior, but not the glass. But the doors are on the homeowner. Every development is different. A lot of consistency here in Ashland relative to homeowners because most of the projects were developed by the Fafford Company. But it works its way through. And in terms of when people vacate because they have to and they don't live there anymore, oftentimes, and Dennis, you don't want to hear this, but we'll say, well, make sure you leave a bed there.
Yeah.
And then people say, well, what do I tell the insurance company? And I said, well, do you call the Mass State Police when you go 75 miles an hour on the Mass Pike? No, but, you know.
Pam, was that Steve just admitting to fraud? No, I'm just kidding.
Absolutely not. You know, all I can think of is, remember when you were a kid and like you'd be in the driver's seat and you shouldn't be, and then something happens, so you switch real quick because that's the guy that actually owns the car. Yeah, that's. I never did that.
Yeah, but I was also the guy that tried to sneak into the Natick Drive-In with 5 of my friends in the trunk, and the cop would say, "Why are you by yourself?" Because my friends are in the trunk.
You didn't think to put somebody next.
Right. No, I don't think so.
Okay, so we've gone off. Is there anything that you think our clients or our vast listening audience should know about?
Well, no, I mean, we sort of highlighted the independent agent, why do business with us. Again, we're not everything to everyone. So there are cases where we just wouldn't be a good fit. We're trying to expand what we do. But for instance, for the person that wants all of their coverage and owns a home in Florida, we're not licensed in the state. So we're not everything to everyone. But if I sell Pam a policy or Steve a policy, they can walk in to our office and talk to me, look me in the face. And so there's something to that, not so much on the front end. It's writing a policy and getting coverage is easy. Sometimes when you have a problem or you have a question, it's not calling, not knowing who you're talking to, being put on hold, the runaround. So it's that back end piece that I think a lot of times is where it's nice having a place that you can go or a person that you can talk to.
So my better half, who is happily running our technical right now, mother worked for a very similar type of agency for 1 billion years, Barbara. Yeah. Barbara was the lady at the front. And every friend that I've met through the better half talks about Barbara because everyone had their insurance through her. Yeah. And they were all stupid kids, or whatever. And Barbara would tell them what they had to do or not do, depending on the circumstance. But it's a lot of years ago, and they still remember Barbara because she was the face of the insurance situation for them. And that's what people want.
And so there's a lot. I think it's both, right? In this industry, there's a lot of consolidation. There's a lot of big business. There's a lot of so part of why I like the idea of leaning into that feel is if we can capture some of those other things through things like the app or other services where the people that want to just
they don't want to talk to you. They want to
or have access to it, or it's not just like, hey, you're not available between the hours of 8 and 5 or whatever, So I think being able to play in both fields is important, but certainly the idea of when you call, it's a live person picking up. When you walk in, there's a live person there to kind of answer questions. I think that's still holds a ton of value, especially as it becomes less relevant in business in general, but certainly in our world. I think the people that still offer it and do it well, that there's a place for that, I think.
I do too. I mean, or it's the same in real estate, or real estate would be all online, which has been predicted for 1 billion years.
Yeah, I mean, it's a trust issue. It's a trust thing. And
it's a big transaction.
Yeah, and, I think relative to the app, it gives the client, customer of yours a sense of ownership. I don't have to depend on them, but I'm going to keep track of my information because I'm paying for it. And I think
I can find it at 8 o'clock at night on a Tuesday if I need to.
Yeah.
Right. But I could still reach out if I need to.
If you need to. And there's nothing worse than standing in line at the registry. Is there anything worse? I mean, I know that's the service that you folks provide and somebody pays for it, right? But who wants to stand in line at the registry? That guy that's making X amount of dollars from the premium that you just paid, or whatever vig there is on the transaction. But it's a service industry, and I feel like we're a service industry. We're that entity in the middle between the large insurance company or the seller or the buyer. Hopefully people have the confidence in us to get the right product for them and to help them through the transaction. I think that's where the real estate industry and the insurance industry sort of go down the same path.
His beard's a lot better.
His beard's a lot better.
Yeah,
I,
just saying. Just saying.
if I had that beard, I could only wear white shirts because it'd be nothing but dandruff.
Looks good for Route 9, as they say. Right?
It's, I appreciate your time.
No, thank you,
More
guys.
than
This has been great.
you know what? How selfish of me. Here we are doing a podcast, and I'm like, I need the education here.
No, this has been.
But it did help, honestly.
And what is openly? I've been meaning to ask since you sat down.
Openly is, I shouldn't have. Openly is a carrier that we represent.
Okay.
And actually, oddly enough, this is kind of funny that one of the companies that's writes those kind of transitional things pretty well. They are the example of a tech company that is kind of on the cutting edge of being able to how they underwrite
Right.
products and how they they have pretty much a home product at this point. But for example, we renovated our home and we're displaced. So we talked about different examples. They were good about writing it because for a while it was, sort of vacant.
Vacant, yeah.
Maintaining it as a homeowner's policy with an endorsement that it had a builder's risk
Yeah.
part. So just a company that's a little bit creative in how they can handle that stuff.
So there's more, would you say there are more and more niche companies in the industry?
I think so. I mean, certainly.
I never heard of them.
The,
I hadn't heard of them.
Yeah, it's again, they're maybe 6 years into the market kind
Okay.
of thing, and they write, gosh, I don't know, they're in 20-something states, primarily just homeowners product. They're trying to develop other products, but auto and certainly, but underwritten by another company, but just pretty shrewd business guys that
Nice.
kind of developed this product. Kind of neat.
Phil,
Yeah.
You know what? I'm thinking of a movie from a long time ago. See a need, fill a need.
Yeah.
You know,
But
and they did.
to your point, Steve, I mean, cyber, cannabis. I mean, there's all these like sort of niche product. I mean, niche always existed, but I think as society changes, insurance is trying to do just that. Like, how do we fit, drones or whatever? How
Right.
do we account for these things that weren't around when Hammurabi was,
Yeah,
or whatever?
yeah. It's interesting. Like as a brokerage firm with space, we have to have a bond, and there's a company that does nothing but that. So if I call you and say, Den, I need a bond, and you can't do it, but you'll have an alternative Massachusetts company for me to call and get a bond. I know that's happened quite a few times. We had to get a cannabis bond, and there was a. I won't get into that, but there was a recommendation by you in your office, and they were very, very helpful. And I think that when you say bond, people are thinking, it's like, well, my kid's in jail and they want $50,000 to let him come home for the weekend. It's more of a $50, $100 coverage that gets you where you need to be in compliance with the state or whoever else.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
So that comes up with retirement plans and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah. Well, good.
Anything else intelligent we have to say?
No, any
I don't
questions
think
for
so.
us?
Questions for us? You don't need to have questions for
Thank God.
Well,
Pretty.
I have to say it's always enjoyable to talk to you, and you have a wonderful bubbling personality, which is unique for the insurance industry.
That's right.
But as did your father-in-law, and his father-in-law before him, so it's
He was
always
all time.
yeah.
Henry was all time.
Henry was quite a man. He was. He ran the show and had a wonderful wit. He just great storyteller. Miss him. And one of the first times I met Henry and Ann, I was down in Falmouth, and we were headed somewhere, Coffee Royale, and I just remember I was shaking all day. I never drank so much coffee in my life. But they're wonderful folks. Yeah.
Well,
But thank you
glad
guys
to-
very
no,
much for
I'm
having us.
have
We had a
thrilled,
blast.
thrilled to actually understand a little more. All I ever do with you is tell jokes. Like, we tell jokes and laugh.
That's perfect.
And then the other day I'm thinking, I know virtually nothing about, the whole thing. So anyway, I'm thrilled to have you here. Honestly, that
Well,
worked out great.
Now
It
you
was
know as
great.
much as I know.
Yeah,
Right.
that's great.
So thank you for those who watch. And if you have topics you'd like to discuss with us or recommend to us that we discuss, please let us know at oakrealtyma.com. And thanks very much.
Thank you.